Sergeant Kyle Hoffman had processed 12,000 requisition forms in 18 months. 12,000 requests for equipment, vehicles, supplies. The paperwork was mind-numbing, routine, until Hoffman saw Form R7734, a requisition for 3 Humvees. Standard request, except the vehicle identification numbers were familiar. Too familiar. Hoffman pulled up Hoffman's database, cross-referenced the VINs, and Hoffman's blood turned cold. These vehicles had been destroyed 6 months ago, listed in an after-action report. IED attack on Route Phoenix, convoy decimated, 7 vehicles lost, 14 personnel killed in action. Hoffman had processed the casualty paperwork personally, had sent condolence letters to families, had marked those VINs as destroyed. Combat loss, end of story. Except now someone was requisitioning them again, as if they'd never been destroyed, as if 14 dead soldiers were still alive somewhere, needing their vehicles back. What Hoffman didn't know was that those 14 soldiers were alive. And they'd been watching Hoffman, waiting to see if anyone would notice, waiting to see if Hoffman was smart enough to figure out the truth, and dangerous enough to do something about it. Hoffman stared at the form. Hoffman's mind raced through possibilities. Clerical error? Someone accidentally using old VINs? Database glitch, reasonable explanations. But Hoffman's instincts said otherwise. Hoffman had been doing this job too long to believe in coincidences. Hoffman pulled up the original casualty report. Convoy Alpha 7, Route Phoenix, March 15th. IED strike destroyed 3 vehicles. Small arms fire destroyed 4 more. 14 KIA. Names listed: Staff Sergeant Thomas Brandt, Sergeant First Class Maria Delgado, Specialist Jacob Freeman, Corporal Amanda Walsh, and 10 others. All confirmed dead. Bodies recovered. Families notified. Flag-draped coffins sent home. But now someone wanted their vehicles back. Someone with access to the requisition system. Someone who knew the VINs. Someone who shouldn't exist. Hoffman made a decision. Hoffman wouldn't report this. Not yet. Hoffman would investigate. Quietly. Find out who submitted the form. Track the paperwork trail. See where it led. The requisition came from Forward Operating Base Raptor. Supply officer signature, Captain Neil Sutton. Hoffman didn't know Sutton. Hoffman called the base, asked for Sutton, was told Sutton was on patrol. Wouldn't be back for 6 hours. Hoffman waited, used the time to dig deeper. Hoffman accessed personnel files, found something strange. The 14 soldiers from Convoy Alpha 7 had all been transferred to Raptor 2 weeks before their supposed deaths. All 14. Same unit, same day. Then 2 weeks later, they were all KIA on the same convoy. Unlikely. Possible, but unlikely. Hoffman checked burial records. 11 of the 14 were buried in Arlington National Cemetery, full military honors. But 3 had been cremated. Private requests, from families. No viewings, no open caskets. Unusual for military deaths, but not unheard of. Hoffman's phone rang. Captain Sutton calling back. Hoffman answered. Hoffman said to Sutton, "Captain Sutton, this is Sergeant Hoffman from Central Supply. I have a question about requisition form R7734. Sutton was quiet for a moment. Then Sutton said to Hoffman, "What's the question, Sergeant?" Hoffman said to Sutton, "The VINs on this form, they match vehicles destroyed 6 months ago. Combat loss. Can you explain that?" Sutton said to Hoffman, "Must be a clerical error. I'll resubmit with corrected information." Hoffman said to Sutton, "Sir, with respect, this isn't a simple typo. All 3 VINs match destroyed vehicles, from the same convoy. The probability of accidentally using 3 specific VINs from one incident is..." Sutton interrupted. Sutton said to Hoffman, Are you questioning my requisition, Sergeant? Hoffman said to Sutton, I'm trying to understand it, sir. These vehicles are listed as combat losses. Insurance claims were filed. Replacement vehicles were already issued. If these VINs are in use somewhere, that's a significant discrepancy. Sutton was quiet again. Longer this time. Then Sutton said to Hoffman, Where are you located, Sergeant? Hoffman said to Sutton, Camp Liberty, Baghdad. Sutton said to Hoffman, I'll be there tomorrow. We'll discuss this in person. Don't mention this to anyone else. Understood. Hoffman said to Sutton, Sir, if there's an issue with... Sutton said to Hoffman more firmly, That's an order, Sergeant. Not a word to anyone until we talk. Clear? Hoffman said to Sutton, Clear, sir. The line went dead. Hoffman sat in Hoffman's office. Something was very wrong. Officers don't fly to another base over a requisition discrepancy. They don't order silence, unless there's something to hide. Hoffman made copies of everything. The requisition form, the casualty report, the personnel transfers, the burial records. Hoffman burned it all to a USB drive, hid it in Hoffman's personal quarters, insurance, in case something happened. Before we continue, I need to hear from you. Drop your name and what city or country you're watching from in the comments right now. Let's see how far this story reaches. Captain Sutton arrived the next day. But Sutton wasn't alone. Sutton brought a civilian. The civilian wore khakis and a polo shirt. He looked like a contractor. The civilian introduced himself as Marcus Kane from Defense Logistics Agency. Kane said they needed to talk, privately. They went to a secure briefing room. Kane did most of the talking. Kane said to Hoffman, Sergeant, you've stumbled into something classified, something you don't have clearance for. The convoy you're asking about is part of an ongoing operation. The details are need to know. You don't need to know. What you need to do is forget you saw that requisition form. Forget you made those calls. Go back to processing paperwork and never mention this again. Hoffman said to Kane, Sir, 14 soldiers are listed as KIA. If they're actually alive, their families deserve to know. If this is some kind of classified operation, fine. But those families are grieving for people who might not be dead. Kane said to Hoffman, Those families received remains, had funerals, received benefits. They have closure. What you're suggesting would destroy that, would raise questions that can't be answered, would compromise operations that are keeping people safe. Is that what you want? Hoffman said to Kane, I want the truth. Kane laughed. Kane said to Hoffman, The truth is complicated. The truth is that sometimes soldiers have to disappear for reasons that serve the greater good. The truth is that you're a supply sergeant. Your job is to process forms, not investigate operations above your pay grade. Sutton said to Hoffman, Sergeant, I'm ordering you to drop this. Forget what you saw. That's a direct order. Hoffman looked between them. Hoffman said to Kane and Sutton, And if I refuse? Kane said to Hoffman, Then you'll find yourself under investigation. Missing equipment, falsified records. We'll find something, and your career will end. Quietly, dishonorably, your choice. They left. Hoffman sat alone. Hoffman had just been threatened by an officer and a civilian, which meant Hoffman was right. Something was very wrong, and powerful people wanted it buried. Hoffman spent 3 days wrestling with the decision. Follow orders, forget what Hoffman saw. Keep Hoffman's career or investigate. Risk everything, possibly for nothing. But Hoffman kept thinking about those families, about parents who'd buried their children, spouses who'd lost their partners, kids growing up without parents. If those soldiers were alive, if they'd faked their deaths, those families deserved to know. Hoffman made a choice. Hoffman would find the truth, no matter what it cost. Hoffman started with the 3 soldiers who'd been cremated: Private Luis Santos, Specialist Jennifer Moore, Corporal Derek Hutchins. No bodies to examine, just ashes in urns. Hoffman found their personnel files, pulled their service records, their medical records, their dental records. Then Hoffman did something risky. Hoffman contacted their families, used the addresses from the casualty notifications, wrote letters, claimed Hoffman was doing a memorial article, asked for photos, personal stories, anything they'd be willing to share. 2 families responded. Santos's mother sent photos. Moore's husband sent a long email about Moore's service. Both included recent photos. From before the deployment, Hoffman studied them, memorized the faces, then Hoffman started watching. Hoffman requested transfer to FOB Raptor, claimed Hoffman needed the change, wanted to serve closer to combat operations. The transfer was approved. Hoffman arrived at Raptor 2 weeks later. Hoffman watched the base, watched the personnel, looked for faces. 14 people who were supposed to be dead. It took 11 days. But Hoffman found one. Corporal Derek Hutchins, walking through the motor pool. Alive, healthy, wearing civilian clothes, but moving with military bearing. Hoffman followed Hutchins, watched where Hutchins went. A building on the edge of the base, old, rarely used. Hoffman waited until dark, approached the building, found a window, looked inside, and saw them, all 14, sitting around a table, planning something, maps spread out, equipment lists, vehicle manifests. They were planning an operation, and they looked scared. Hoffman watched, listened through the cracked window, heard fragments of conversation, something about a shipment, a deadline, a threat. Then Hoffman heard a name that made everything make sense. Major General Philip Markham, Pentagon Brass, Defense Procurement Oversight. One of the soldiers, Staff Sergeant Brandt, said to the group, "Markham knows we're onto him. He's got people looking for us. If we don't move soon, we're all dead. Really dead this time." Sergeant Delgado said to the group, "The evidence is solid. We have the manifests, the financial records, the communications, everything that proves Markham has been running illegal weapons to insurgents, using our convoys, our people, getting soldiers killed to cover his tracks." Hoffman felt the world tilt. These soldiers hadn't deserted. They'd discovered a conspiracy, and they'd faked their death to stay alive long enough to expose it. Hoffman made a decision. Hoffman knocked on the door. Everything went silent inside. Then movement. The door opened. Specialist Freeman stood there, Freeman's weapon drawn. Freeman said to Hoffman, "Who are you?" Hoffman said to Freeman, "Sergeant Kyle Hoffman, Supply. I'm the one who found your requisition form, the one who figured out you're alive." Freeman's eyes widened. Freeman called back to the others. Freeman said, "We've got a problem." Hoffman was pulled inside, surrounded by 14 supposedly dead soldiers, all armed, all looking at Hoffman like Hoffman was the threat. Brandt stepped forward. Brandt said to Hoffman, "How did you find us?" Hoffman said to Brandt, "Someone submitted a requisition for your vehicles. Used the actual VINs, I noticed. Investigated. They threatened me, told me to back off. So I knew something was wrong." Brandt said to Hoffman, "And now you're here, to arrest us? Turn us in?" Hoffman said to Brandt, "No, I'm here to help. I heard what you said about Markham, about illegal weapons, about getting soldiers killed. If that's true, I want to help you expose it." Delgado said to Hoffman, "Why should we trust you?" You're one person, with no reason to believe us, every reason to report us. Hoffman said to Delgado, because I spent 18 months processing casualty reports, sending letters to families, telling them their loved ones died serving their country. If some of those deaths were because of corruption, because a general was running weapons for profit, then those families deserve justice, and I'm going to help them get it. The 14 soldiers looked at each other. Silent communication. Years of working together, trusting each other, now deciding whether to trust Hoffman. Finally, Brandt nodded. Brandt said to Hoffman, "Okay, sit down. We'll tell you everything, and then you decide if you still want to help." If this story is gripping you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. And tell me where you're watching from in the comments, your name and city. These stories need to be heard. They told Hoffman everything. 6 months ago, Convoy Alpha 7 had been tasked with transporting supplies to Forward Operating Base Phoenix. Standard run. But Sergeant Delgado had noticed something off about the manifest. Equipment that didn't match the requisition orders. Crates that were sealed with non-standard markings. Delgado had reported it to Staff Sergeant Brandt. Brandt had investigated, opened one of the crates, found weapons, American weapons, but marked for disposal, destroyed equipment that was supposed to have been scrapped. Instead, it was being transported. To where? Why? Brandt had gone to their commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, reported what they'd found. Davis had told them to forget it, said it was above their clearance, not their concern. But Brandt couldn't let it go. Brandt kept digging. Brandt found a pattern. Multiple convoys, over 18 months, all carrying disposed equipment, all following the same route, all ending at a depot controlled by contractors. Contractors who had ties to Major General Markham. Brandt had connected the dots. Markham was stealing equipment, marking it as destroyed or disposed, then selling it to contractors, who were selling it to insurgents. American weapons were ending up in Taliban hands, through official military channels, and soldiers were dying because of it. When several convoys had been ambushed using American weapons and tactics, Brandt had realized Markham wasn't just profiting. Markham was feeding intelligence to the buyers, telling them which routes to hit, which convoys weren't protected, maximizing profit by creating demand for more weapons to replace the ones lost in attacks. Brandt had gathered evidence, brought it to the attention of Military Criminal Investigation Command, filed an official report. 2 days later, Convoy Alpha 7 had been issued movement orders. Route Phoenix, a road notorious for IED attacks. Brandt had known it was a setup. Markham was eliminating the witnesses. So Brandt had made a plan. They would fake their deaths, stage an attack, make it look real enough that no one would question it, use borrowed equipment from a friendly unit, burn out the vehicles, plant evidence, make everyone believe they were dead, then disappear. Gather more evidence, enough to take down Markham even from beyond the grave. They'd executed the plan perfectly. The fake attack had been reported as enemy action. Bodies, actually remains from a military morgue scheduled for cremation, had been recovered. DNA tests were conducted on wrong samples. Funerals were held. The 14 soldiers of Alpha 7 were officially dead, and they'd been working ever since to gather irrefutable evidence against Markham. Hoffman listened to all of it. Hoffman saw the evidence: financial records, communications intercepts, shipping manifests, testimony from contractors who'd been coerced into participation. It was overwhelming, damning. Proof that a 2-star general had been running an illegal weapons operation that had gotten dozens of American soldiers killed. Hoffman said to Brandt, "Why haven't you released this? Why are you still hiding?" Brandt said to Hoffman, "Because Markham has protection. Pentagon brass, politicians, defense contractors. If we surface too soon, with anything less than perfect evidence, it'll get buried. We'll get buried. For real this time. We need everything. Every document, every witness, every piece of the puzzle. Then we go public, all at once. Too big to suppress." Hoffman said to Brandt, "And the requisition form, the one I found, that was a mistake?" Freeman said to Hoffman sheepishly, "That was me. I needed parts for our vehicles. Forgot to use the fake VINs. I'm sorry. I almost compromised everything." Brandt said to Freeman, "No. You gave us exactly what we needed. Someone on the inside. Someone with access to systems we don't have. Someone who can verify our evidence through official channels." Brandt turned to Hoffman. Brandt said to Hoffman, "Sergeant, if you really want to help, we need you to do something dangerous. We need you to access personnel records, confirm the cremations, verify the DNA tests, show that our deaths were fabricated. That's the piece we can't get from hiding. But you can, if you're willing." Hoffman looked at the 14 soldiers. Dead people fighting from the shadows, risking everything to expose corruption that was killing their brothers and sisters in arms. Hoffman made a decision that would change Hoffman's life forever. Hoffman said to Brandt, "Tell me what you need. I'll get it." Over the next 6 weeks, Hoffman worked as a mole. Hoffman accessed records, confirmed that the DNA tests had been falsified, that the cremated remains weren't from the soldiers, that the entire casualty report was fabricated. Hoffman gathered official documentation, stamped, sealed, irrefutable. Hoffman also discovered something else. 3 other convoys had been destroyed under similar circumstances. 23 more soldiers listed as KIA. Hoffman checked. Some of them were actually dead, but 11 weren't. They'd gone underground too. Discovered the same conspiracy. Faked their deaths to survive. Hoffman connected Brandt with the other survivors. They combined their evidence. Built a case so massive, so detailed, that no one could ignore it. They identified every transaction, every shipment, every casualty that resulted from Markham's operation. 417 American soldiers had died because of weapons Markham had sold to insurgents. Then, they went public. All of them. 39 supposedly dead soldiers appeared at a press conference. With evidence, with testimony, with documents that couldn't be denied. The story exploded. International news, congressional investigations, military tribunals. Markham was arrested within 24 hours, along with 17 other officers, 43 contractors. The conspiracy reached into the Pentagon, into Congress, into defense corporations worth billions. The trials lasted 2 years. In the end, Markham got life in prison. Most of his co-conspirators got decades. The defense contractors involved collapsed. And the 39 soldiers, they were given immunity, honorably reinstated, given back pay, recognition for exposing the largest military corruption scheme in history. Brandt received the Distinguished Service Medal. The others received commendations. All of them received their lives back. But there was a cost. The families who'd buried their loved ones had to process that their grief had been based on a lie. Some were grateful, happy to have their family members back. Others felt betrayed, angry that they'd been manipulated, that their pain had been used as cover for an investigation. Hoffman attended some of the reunions, watched families come back together, watched the complicated emotions, the joy, the anger, the confusion. War creates impossible situations. And sometimes, the only way to fight evil is to hurt the people you love. Hoffman thought about that a lot. About Staff Sergeant Brandt telling Brandt's wife that Brandt had been dead for 6 months. About watching her cry, scream, collapse. About the look on her face when she realized it had been necessary. That Brandt had sacrificed her peace of mind to save hundreds of lives. Hoffman never regretted helping, never regretted exposing the truth. But Hoffman carried the weight of those families' pain, the necessary cruelty of a deception meant to prevent greater evil. That was the price of justice. Sometimes you hurt the innocent to stop the guilty, and you live with that, forever. Years later, Hoffman would see Brandt again, at a military ceremony. Brandt approached Hoffman. Brandt said to Hoffman, "Thank you for believing us, for helping us. We couldn't have done it without you." Hoffman said to Brandt, "You sacrificed everything, your identities, your family's peace, your own lives, in a sense. I just processed paperwork." Brandt said to Hoffman, "You risked your career, your freedom, your life, because you saw something wrong and couldn't let it go. That's not just processing paperwork. That's courage." Hoffman thought about the USB drive. The moment Hoffman decided to investigate instead of forget. The choice to help 39 dead people come back to life. To expose corruption that no one else would fight. Hoffman said to Brandt, "We all did what we had to. What our oaths required, even when it cost us everything." Brandt nodded. Brandt said to Hoffman, "That's what being a soldier means. Not just following orders, but knowing when to disobey them. When to fight the enemy within. You understood that. You lived it. The convoy that never existed became the convoy that exposed everything. 14 soldiers who died to stay alive. Who'd sacrificed their identities to save their integrity. Who'd proven that sometimes the enemy wears the same uniform. And the only way to fight them is from the shadows. As ghosts. As the dead who refuse to stay buried. That was their story. That was Hoffman's story. The story of ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Of clerks and supply sergeants and convoy personnel becoming heroes not through combat, but through courage. Through refusing to be complicit. Through choosing truth over comfort. Hoffman kept one thing. The original requisition form. Form R773V4. The mistake that started everything. Hoffman framed it, hung it in Hoffman's office. A reminder that sometimes the smallest errors reveal the biggest truths. That paying attention matters. That one person noticing one wrong detail can save hundreds of lives. That was enough. It would always be enough.